Today on Beads, Baubles and Jewels, it's designs with a twist.
Beads, Baubles and Jewels has been brought to you in part by Beading Daily, your jewelry making resource for how-to projects, books, magazines, DVDs, events, and online learning. BeadingDaily.com. Beadalon, a manufacturer of flexible bead stringing wires, memory wire, artistic wire, stringing materials, innovative findings, and tools to help you fashion your own jewelry. Beadalon.com. Dreamtime Creations, an online supplier of crystals, findings, and jewelry making supplies since 1989. DreamtimeCreations.com. Halcraft, jewelry component manufacturer. Halcraft.com.
Take a look at your jewelry making supplies and projects with a new perspective. Today on Beads, Baubles and Jewels, we're demonstrating designs with a twist, starting with Mary Hettmansperger. She shows the options and techniques for using buttons as a component in Cold Connections metalwork. It's a brand new twist on buttons. Then, Candie Cooper is back with the Quick Links tassel necklace from Necklaceology. Next in today's jewelry workshop, we look at using sliders as pendants, dangles, and drops. And finally, Melinda Barta demonstrates diagonal peyote stitch for a twist on seed beads. Let's meet Mary. I'm here with author and artist Mary Hettmansperger. And Mary, you have some great ideas always for metalworking, and these are buttons with a twist.
Well, what I do is a lot of the buttons end up being very fancy and have a lot of metal quality to them, and I love the colors, a lot of the brown, big old brown buttons on the big coats, and
definitely.
So I've tried to utilize them, and the challenge is, for me at least, to make it not look like a button. I'm just not that fond of.
It's a button in disguise.
Yeah, it's kind of a button in disguise. So there's always something that you have to kind of deal with, though, especially when you're looking at the shank buttons. And this is just one of the problem-solving things I've come up with, is I create almost a little donut, a little divot for this little shank to fit in. Otherwise, it just sits right on the surface. So I poke my holes, and basically you want to get your metal annealed so it's very soft. And then I just hammer it first this way, creating a nice, a subtle dome, and then I go just in the center of it and hammer it down in the center. Now you can use the dapping block if you have a really big shank fit in the back and you need it, you need more of a place to find that to fit. The other thing here, this is fun. This is actually using a button a little bit different, but I've taken 2 pieces of 18 or 16 gauge wire. I just hammer out my ends. I didn't burn a ball or anything on the ends of them. I just actually hammered them, and that creates a real nice paddle. I took a 28 gauge wire and I just wove it back and forth, just basically a figure 8, leaving both of my wires ends on each side. I created, again, the same little divot I did on the first one, but this time that's sort of my middle piece.
You kind of made your own button there.
Made my own button, and then my back piece is actually the bigger button.
And then you could attach this to something else to create a pendant or a pin.
Totally.
And let's look at the pins that you made too, because these show 2 different ways of how you have the button attached.
Right, and this is just a little 2-hole button. This I actually used brads from the scrapbooking store. And this one, again, I had a much bigger shank button, so I had to create a very big, divot for it to fit in, or it would just sit on top. And
I mean, it's kind of a setting for the
button.
It
is a very
really.
setting,
Yeah.
almost like a bezel.
Creating a subtle setting.
A little bit of bezel.
So, and on this one, you layered the pieces together and did some wire wrapping here too.
Right.
This is one that I've done a lot. I love the way that they look together.
Oh, they do. And this is nice because this is just a button. So I've used this was a
metal
bead,
button.
a metal button. But then I turned around and used the button as a layer.
It looks great.
Yeah, and it just gives another element.
And these really are in disguise here.
They really are. And what's great about this, and I'm going to show you how to do this one. This is fun because this is, again, using the shank button. You could use any button in here. And what I do, especially the ones that are rounded around the top, what's nice is I'm going to create basically a bezel. And as you can see, I'm kind of balancing this. And that means that I'm going to have to probably put a spacer in the corners. But to do this, you want to make sure that your metal is nice and annealed. And the way you're going to do that is just with a propane torch. You can use the fire scale, you can take it off, but basically right now it's very soft. This is a 24 gauge copper sheeting, and I'm just going to show you how. I'm going to open up my disc cutter, and I'm going to slide this in, and I'm going to push this down.
And do you just choose a circle that's slightly larger than your button, or smaller, I mean?
A little bit smaller.
Depends.
Yeah,
Okay.
a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to take this. And the way that I do my disc cutter, I'm kind of finicky with disc cutters because they can get kind of screwed up really quick. You just drop your thing in there, and then you come in, and I always use the acrylic hammer and let it fall completely through.
Okay.
And then what you have is a really nice hole. And if you notice, I have no texture whatsoever on this piece. I've just annealed it. Then I'm going to take and go to a larger hole here, center it, put my dapping circle up here, and on this I probably will use a regular hammer. And I start to bend it down, and then I gently, because I don't want to mess up my dapping block, but I gently tap it around the top.
Just so that it's flat
Just so
enough
it's
to
flattened.
attach them.
And then push, and then dap. And then you can kind of check to see, you know, how you're going.
Where you are.
And as you can see on this one, there's two different ways I did this. On this one, I actually went back in, did some steel wool, and took and made the shine back.
It looks
On
great.
this one is gel flux. So what I do on the metal is I put a gel flux coating down and then heat it, and it will turn that nice red. But this is great because then this, you can capture buttons. Well, that one's a little bit small. But you can capture your buttons and sort of, you know, bezel them inside, make it a little bit smaller. But
Oh, yeah, that would
it
look
makes
great.
it really look nice.
Yeah, it
makes
does.
it really look nice.
Let's take a look at the button necklace where you trapped it in the center there. That
Yeah,
looks so
and
pretty.
this is nice because, you know, a lot of buttons are very thick, so you don't want them looking like they're just sitting on the surface. So by doing it this way, I've actually, you can see I've got my dimension built up with my little discs. On this one, I just use nuts and bolts, but to connect this to this side, this back one, I'm going to turn this around so you can see the back side. You can see where I've got 4 little eyelets. That is a piece of metal that this button is actually connected to. So the button got connected to that piece of metal by brads. And the brads are great because they just poke in and open up.
I love the way you ran the wire through the pendant too.
Yeah,
That's
it
a little
makes
bit
it a
of a
real
different
easy
look.
hang. Makes
Yeah,
it a
looks
real
really
easy
good.
hang.
And this one is another idea of layering the buttons on top of each
And
other.
that's just a little bitty button on the top that I basically just sewed onto a piece of metal.
Yeah, lots of technique ideas. Well, thanks, Mary. These are some great tips.
Okay.
And I will be right back. I'm here with Beadalon design team member and author Candie Cooper, and you have this great tassel pendant.
Hi, Katie.
Hey.
Thanks. This all started because I love making charm bracelets so much, and you can only have so many charm bracelets in your collection. So I started adding like the charms kind of as a focal piece.
That's a good idea. I like the way it cascades too.
Thank
It
you.
makes a great pendant.
Thanks. Yeah. So basically, all you have to do is pick a large link chain. I have a couple different samples here. This is a silver, and the links are perfectly round. Or I've got one back here that I've started that use oval links. And then I'm going to show you how you can work in some ribbon or wire mesh in this case.
Okay.
The first thing you're going to do is pick your wire mesh, and you want to cut it to about this, just a little bit larger than a couple inches longer than your chain. And then you're going to grab a medium-sized jump ring, run it through the end or the loop, and then fold it over about an inch.
Okay.
And then I've got some like 22 gauge wire, and then you're just gonna wrap it. I'm all about wire wrap connections these days.
Yeah, it's a quick and easy way to attach unusual materials too.
Right, and that, I guess maybe I'm more about unusual materials.
You can be both. It's okay.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so then after maybe like 3 or 4 wraps, you would just trim the end with your wire cutters. And where's the end? There it is. And then you're good to go. And you can use scissors to cut this wire mesh. I forgot to say that because I pre-cut it. But anyway, that gives you how you'll connect it to the chain. Then you're going to secure it to the end of your chain like I've done here.
Okay.
With a jump ring, just like so. Do you see that, how
Yes.
that works? And then just weave it like you did in first grade, over, under, over, under,
And
over,
it looks
under.
like you skipped a link, though. You didn't do every link.
No, I just went in and out of each loop.
Oh, you did? Okay.
It just looks funny on this oval chain. And then you'll finish the end like you did before, and with the wire wrapping. And you'll secure it to the end with a jump ring.
Great.
Now let's talk a little bit about these clasp options. You can close this like you would any necklace. I've got a few different options here. You can use the toggle toggle, or you can use lobsters.
lobster.
I love these heart-shaped lobsters.
too.
It just depends on what your theme is for the necklace, kind of.
So maybe choose a class that goes a little bit with the charms that you're using.
Right. And for this one that I brought along, I actually substituted the traditional ring because I didn't want the extra loop on the toggle for one of the
perfect. So you
solid
just
twist rings.
Have to use a toggle bar that fits with whatever
Yeah.
link you choose.
Or you could use this combination.
Oh, yeah.
It's
and
up to you.
if you did that, you'd be mixing metals, which I know is one of your favorite
One of my
things.
favorites. So you would just connect that to the end of your chain, and then for the opposite end, you would put your toggle bar or lobster clasp. Now let's talk a little bit about this, the tassel pieces coming off. My favorite thing about this necklace is these are actually interchangeable.
Oh, okay.
So like if you look at this one, I've attached lobster clasps so you can loop other components or take them away.
It's a moon necklace.
It is a moon necklace
You
or
can
a
choose the
holiday
one that
necklace.
speaks to you that day, or if you're giving it as a gift, you could switch it up a little bit.
Yeah, or give, add to it as you go.
Yeah.
So a few different ideas for making a tassel. You can string a bead onto a head pin and finish it with a wrapped loop, like so.
Yeah.
And then you could leave it as is or connect it to a piece of chain.
That really takes it to the next level, I think. That piece of chain, when you put that on there, I just thought, ooh,
Dazzling.
it is.
And then you would just secure that all the way and then finish it with the
Yeah.
trim the end.
And it gives it a lot more movement, too, when you make it a little bit longer.
Right. And then if you look at this one just next to over here, I've got all these different link shapes
Yeah.
that you can use as your base. So the next thing I might do is add this chain to
Oh,
the
I see.
oval link. And then you can also make charms with these pinch bails.
Pinch
And
bails are great.
they're my favorite. So the next thing you're going to do is just sink this into your crystal, and then let me switch it around.
Sure.
And then grab your pliers and then give it a good squeeze once you feel like it's lined up with your holes.
You just want to be really careful not to crack that crystal.
That's the challenge. But you just, nice and easy does it.
Yeah, and I like pinch bails too, because if you're really nervous about it, you just use your fingers.
That's what I'm using right now. Like to get it started, to make sure it's locked in.
Then you can just gently press it the rest of the way.
Right. And then
Cool.
you'll use a jump ring to attach it to your base loop.
Okay.
Okay. So then once you have all of these components, oh, before I forget, you can also use charms like these. You could connect these to your central link. Okay,
Yeah.
so you have a nice cluster that all goes together. You can even stack in more loops and connect them all with
Oh, that would
jump
look
rings.
nice.
Yeah, it's all about layers, right?
Definitely.
Okay, so if we look at the finished one, then we can interchange these charms and pieces after we attach a lobster claw to the chain. So this is an everyday look, but if you wanted a more festive look, you can take this one off and add this fella and this poinsettia charm.
And then you have your holiday wear.
Totally different.
Ready to go.
One of my other favorite things about this is that it actually mixes metals. Like I love the shiny matte silver, shiny-ish matte. So
Right, I know
wire,
what you meant.
yeah,
the
mesh
gold.
With the gold. And then we've got our toggle.
It looks great. Let's
Thanks.
take a look at this one too, because this one has more of that gunmetal look and the hematite
Yeah.
and silver. That's so pretty together.
Basically the same necklace except more with chains. You know, and these are just bead spacer bars that I linked together and added the CZ drop to the end. And this time I didn't use a pinch bail, I used a jump ring.
Okay, and the other necklace shows another way of using rings as dangles.
Right, it's again, it's about layers. You can, anytime you use a repetitive shape together, it works design-wise.
Oh yeah, and we should
like
mention that chain too. That polyester chain's one of my favorites. Nice and lightweight, adds that matte look.
Soft, but a contrasting texture, you know, with the fabric.
Definitely. Great ideas. Thank you, Candie.
Thanks, Katie.
We'll be right back. This jewelry making workshop is about using sliders in other ways, like as dangles, pendants, and drops. So take a look at this purple necklace, and you can see the typical way that you would use a slider is to separate a double strand design like this. And if you look at the back of this piece here, you can see the beading wires just passing through both sets of holes. And this is the normal way that you would use them is to string them within the design like this. And I love these, that druzy style is so pretty. Now this necklace uses them as pendants. So rather than have one pendant in the center, which you could certainly do, I chose to use 3 as focal pieces, and I just strung through the top hole in the slider. So that is one way that you could use them. Now another way is to create your own pendant. And with this piece, I created a wire wrap that holds it onto this kind of, collection of special beads from your collection. So what you'll do is you'll use 20 gauge wire, and you'll cut a piece that's about 6 inches long. Then you're going to make a wrapped loop, and to start out, just leave about, an inch, inch and a half at the end. Make your loop using round nose pliers, and then before you wrap it shut, you'll hang the pendant. And this type of slider has loops on the back rather than the holes through the end, which would certainly work too. It would just take a little bit of experimenting. Then you'll come in with your chain nose pliers, and I'm using my bent chain nose, and you'll close that loop. I like to hold the 2 pieces together and then wrap the short tail with my fingers. Okay, so that gives you your connection. Then I'm going to trim this so it's nice and flush here. Then you're going to pass through your beads, and you can use any assortment. And this is a fun way to kind of show off some favorites from your stash. And you'll notice that I'm combining materials. So I have my metal with crystal inlay and then an acrylic bead, and you might want to put a big showstopper bead up here as well, and then maybe something smaller at the top. You can just create kind of an assemblage of different styles, and that is going to be a really fun centerpiece that you can just add to a chain. So again, to make that wrapped loop, you make a 90-degree angle, use your round nose pliers, and this time I'm going to make it slightly larger. And by larger, I mean I'm working higher on the round nose pliers. That's going to give you a larger circle there. That way you could string it onto leather cord, you could string it onto chain, or you could string it onto ribbon or some other stringing material. Now I'm holding the loop within the flat part of my pliers and then coiling it around to wrap that. So once you have this coiled, then you're going to cut this, again, making it nice and flush. And another little tip for that is to use your chain nose pliers. Being careful not to mar your wire, just come back and gently squeeze that coil. So you work hard in it a little bit, and you make sure that any ends are perfectly flush and won't cause any snags. So you can see how quick it is to whip up a little pendant using a slider. Now, if you want to take a look again at the finished piece, you'll see that I stacked the beads on the wire just like I just showed you, and then hung it from a gunmetal color of chain. So this is just a few tips for using sliders as pendants, dangles, and drops. I'm here with beadwork editor and author Melinda Barta. Welcome, Melinda.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you're going to share with us an idea for peyote stitch.
Yes.
This is special.
Yes, I'm going to show you diagonal peyote stitch.
Okay.
And this stitch is really, really interesting because it's deceiving. The first time I actually saw this stitch, I had to really analyze which stitch it was because it angles the beads at a very unique direction.
And you can see that really well on the leaves on the necklace.
Yes.
That is a beautiful piece, and I love the colors that you chose with the matte and the shiny all together. Yes. So how do we get started?
Okay, today I'm going to show you with size 8 and size 11 beads.
Okay.
So I'm going to begin by adding a stop bead to the end of the thread. And I started with 11 size 8 beads and 1 size 11. So these beads make up both rows 1 and 2. Now,
all right, so you just do twice as many for the width. For the
right,
final.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, actually the width will stay the same, but with peyote, they're going to stagger up and down. And so that's where you get 1 and 2, because as you're counting peyote, you need to go back and forth, almost like stair stepping as you count up the piece. So with row 3, we're just going to work this as we would any other flat peyote stitch with 1 bead in each stitch.
Okay.
So I'll take the first couple stitches here, pick up a bead, skip a bead, and pass through the next. So pretty much any basic peyote stitch is going to be that same peyote mantra. Pick up a
one,
bead,
skip one,
go through the next. And then use your good tension to encourage the beads to stack. So in this sample here, I've completed row 3 and I'm ready to move on to row 4. But first we're going to start this next row with the size 11 bead. And let me show you in the illustration.
Okay.
We're going to start with 1 size 11 and then work across the row with 1 bead in each stitch. And now this becomes the really interesting part. This is the increase that you're going to be making at the end of the row. And it consists of 3 beads. So the first bead strong actually belongs to the current row. So this will be the final bead of row 4. Then we'll string a size 11 bead, and that actually belongs to the previous row. So that will be a row 3 bead. And then the last bead strung is actually part of the next row.
Okay, so that's how you're going to start forming that diagonal slanted look of the weave.
Yeah, we're always going to be forming increases on this side of the work, decreases on the other side.
Oh, okay.
And then you'll see that our strip is going to become diagonal. So I'm going to show you this entire row here. So remember, we lead with the size 11, pick up, pass through the next, and now I'm going to work across the row in the green beads.
And can you do this type of stitch with any size beads as long as you have the varying sizes? Is that how it works, or is it best with these particular ones?
You can use any bead, and you actually don't even have to vary them. I just did it for a little bit of accent along the edge. And so here's that really crucial increase that I want to show you. So pick up a bead of row 4, then our size 11, which will be part of row 3, and then we'll pick up another one, which is the first bead of row 5. Slide them down to the beadwork, and I like to hold them in place because I need to pass back through the first bead of those 3 beads just strung.
And then it's right where you need it.
Exactly. So when I snug it up, you can kind of encourage them to stack. And remember how I said that size 11 was part of the previous row?
Right.
This little end can twist sometimes. So if you are using different beads here, make sure you turn it so that 11 is on the
so
bottom.
that it lines up and really is stacking on top.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I'll show you on this next illustration, we're going to be working row 5. And so here, it's this blue thread we're going to follow. We're just going to complete row 5. So we're going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 beads, but look, we're going to stop short. Instead of working to the very end, this is where the decrease comes in. So if you look at this illustration as a whole, you can see the decreases are on one side and the increases are on the other. So here I'll work across the row, finishing row 5. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and this last stitch is 5. And you can hold your work whatever is comfortable for you. It's just, if you're first learning a stitch, it's really nice to work across the row and just kind of lay it back down and compare it to your illustration. Just check that you're still on the right course.
Okay.
And so here's where I stop short, and when I begin the next row, I'll just do what I did before. Work across the row, work my increase, and work back.
And then back. And so if you had done it all in the same color, you just showed us the varying colors to give us a really good example of, so we could see it, right?
Right.
But here you can see what it starts to form into as the rows are stacking together. Now on the leaves on your piece here, you have both sides. You make a turn.
Exactly. So here you can see that I'm going to start making decreases on this side while we increase on the other side. And you opened a nice page in the book here. You can see that the leaf really begins to form, because first we built this way, and now we go build the diagonal the other way, and then we'll zip the leaf down the center.
Well, this is a really great idea, and what a great way to spice up your peyote. Thank you, Melinda. And thanks again for joining us today. I hope to see you next time as we mix and match our materials for unexpected results.
Instructions for today's projects, plus other ideas, techniques, and tutorials are available on the web at beadsbaublesandjewels.com. This is show 1810. If you enjoyed today's show and want to see more projects and great guests, download individual episodes for $2.99 each or order a complete DVD set of the entire Beads, Baubles and Jewels Series 1800 for $29.95 plus shipping and handling at beadsbaublesandjewels.com. Don't miss a single episode. Beads, Baubles and Jewels has been brought to you in part by Beading Daily, your jewelry making resource for how-to projects, books, magazines, DVDs, events, and online learning. BeadingDaily.com. Beadalon, a manufacturer of flexible bead stringing wires, memory wire, artistic wire, stringing materials, innovative findings, and tools to help you fashion your own jewelry. Beadalon.com. Dreamtime Creations, an online supplier of crystals, findings, and jewelry making supplies since 1989. Dreamtimecreations.com. Halcraft, jewelry component manufacturer. Halcraft.com.